the very, very beginning was a few of us, gosh, years ago, used to talk about the fact that what's compelling in a shooter, what makes shooters great, are all about this kind of quick feedback loop. Its inception was really starting from the point of view of game design. So then those guys kind of went out and we started conceptualizing and talking with publishing partners, and it was really cool how much interest there was. We had a number of the top 10 publishers all wanting the game.
This is a game I always wanted to play, you know? Like, as soon as, like, you know, the pitch was, let's get all the visceral combat of a great shooter and mix it with that, you know, addictive and really fun and unique loot loop you get out of a role-playing game. And I was like, wow, I want to play that game. You know, I had spent, you know, hundreds of hours in college playing, you know, games like Diablo, and so I was really hungry for more. And so the opportunity to really kind of, you know, invent a new type of game, like this role-playing shooter, was, you know, something that was really exciting to me personally.
I came onto the project about a year after it had been going, and I was looking for work. And when I found out what Gearbox was working on, you know, I was looking at several different companies. I was like, you're making my dream game. You're making the game I've always wanted to play. So I spent a lot of time really working on my resume and like, hey, Gearbox, I really want to work on this. So, yeah.
The game would have sucked without you, well, so I'm really glad you did that.
I think so.
But you know, what you were saying about the game that you always wanted to play, like, it's so right. Like, I remember once, probably in 2004, when I was promoting Brothers Arms Road to Hill 30, I did some interview where they asked me, like, what game have you spent more time playing than any other game? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure, so I'm going to put down the two because I didn't measure the hours. Right. And they were NetHack and Doom. Yeah. Like, how telling is that, right? It didn't occur to me until this moment when you said that.
Yeah, for me it would have been Doom or Doom 2, you know, and Diablo.
Right,
same thing. Those two. Yep.
NetHack was like old man's version of Diablo.
Yes.
At the very beginning, for level design, we had a whole concept of like randomized levels that we were actually going to piece together parts of the level, and that didn't feel good. So that one, and there's all kinds of stuff Jimmy's worked on that's probably gone through that too.
It was around this time of the year, in 2007, I believe, that I showed the game to Andy McNamara and Reiner up at Game Informer, and that led to Andy making the decision to put the first Borderlands on the cover of the magazine, which is a big risk, of course, because it's new IP and like, what the hell. And at that stage, that was 2007. Remember, the game shipped in October of 2009, and at that stage, we had already had over 2 years invested in the development of the game. And when you think about what that was at that stage compared to what like,
yeah.
I mean, it was great, but man, we did so much to change the game and iterate it and evolve it. So probably like from like, okay, we're doing this to shelf date was probably about 4.5 years. From the first time I think Brian and I had a conversation about Shooter Looter was in 1999. So it's, you know, I don't know, it's been a while.
Yeah, Borderlands was very much a project that really evolved on its own over time. So, you know, we like to think of it as a stew. Like we'd throw some stuff in and we'd stir it around, and from there we'd look at it and say, well, where does the game want to go from here? And it would sort of move and progress. And, you know, the art style change was probably the biggest, most obvious change. Like
to the outside person.
Yeah, the outside person. Clearly. Yeah, the outside person is that, you know, before that the game was a much more gritty, much more serious tone, and we kind of realized, well, it actually wants to be more over the top. It wants to be a little crazier, and you know, and that type of thing happened all throughout the development of Borderlands, and it took that long to sort of get to the point where, okay, it's all together, it's all working. Let's get it out there and give it to the public.
Do you guys remember? Probably the first 2 years, maybe 3 years of development, the biggest question that constantly came up was, is this a shooter or is this a role-playing game?
Yeah.
It's like, it's both, dude. Yeah. Like, come on, like, why are we debating? Yeah. And every time that debate would come up, it's like, the people are like, this should be a shooter. Like all the things that are great about the looting and the growth and the choice and discovery and all that were kind of put on the wayside, and we're like, no, we're missing it. And then every time, well, it should be an RPG, then the shooting part started to suck. Yeah. And it constantly it's like we had to figure out how to balance that. Like the pendulum almost had to just swing for a number of years until it actually got to the right spot, which is right there where you want it.
Like we've used the analogy before that with a Reese's peanut butter cup, you don't have to choose if you want chocolate or peanut butter. You get both.
Yeah.
So it's sort of thought of the game in the same way as like
It's a Reese's
both of these things are fun, and you put them together and they're even better. Kind of a synergy thing happens.
And it's a new thing as a consequence.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I still love chocolate, and I kind of like peanut butter. But man, a Reese's peanut butter cup, that is a special, magical thing, and that's the only one. That's the only thing like it.
People were discovering like what was the right tone for things, and you realize like this really wasn't a super serious game like a hardcore realistic shooter or something like that. Like this is a much more fun environment, which kind of fit within, as Randy said, there's so much of our personalities in the game. I think that fit our own style, which is the sense that Pandora is really a pretty awful place. Like there's all this, it's a desolate wasteland in areas, and there's all these mercenaries and evil corporations trying to strip mine the planet, and crazy aliens, you've awakened, and all this kind of stuff. But at its heart, it's also kind of a lighthearted, fun, doesn't take itself too seriously, kind of a game experience. And I think we enjoyed kind of that juxtaposition of putting like what's really a pretty bleak setting with guys like TK Baha, who are just hanging out, in his beachwear, like actually loving life. We kind of enjoyed putting those two together.
He's loving life despite the fact that he's blind and missing a leg.
Yeah, exactly.
And he lost his wife to a skag.
Yep.
But Baha is Ahab in reverse, of course. The skag is like, Scar is like his white whale. Scar is one of the big skags that you hunt in the beginning of the game.
Up until that point, we've been playing around with like a darker sense of humor, but it was the art change that gave us the freedom to have that dark streak.
I think it kind of unlocked it for us in a way. Like now it made sense to have that darker, kind of sarcastic tone to it, because
I think the very first line in our prototype was, "It looks like the armpit of hell," or something. It's like even from the beginning, like Matt. And what's funny is when we were in certification, I remember I went down and I asked Rob Hieronymus, who's one of the first designers on the ground working on the thing. So, did you have how the game turned out? Did it match anything like what you expected when you started? And he's like, no. And then a few minutes later, I went over to Matt Armstrong and asked the exact same question, and he said, exactly.
I was going to mention the art style change. I mean, it changed the nature of the Borderlands universe, but it also changed a lot of the nature of the mechanics. So once we went to a more lighthearted sort of comic book style art style, that really opened up like the weapons. So before it was like, well, what are our guns? Once the art style changed, then we said, well, the guns didn't have to be that realistic anymore. Like we had, again, going back to TK Baha, he had his special shotgun, the wave.
The wave.
Yeah. And it fires bullets that go in a wave pattern. Well, bullets don't do that. But before the art style change, that felt wrong. Once the art style change happened, we went, that's absolutely right. What else can we do here?
Healing bullets.
Yeah, healing bullets. Yeah, that was another thing that came out of there.
put
How about I
big
shoot
ass
my
blades
buddy?
on the front of pistols and stuff. And
I think that the challenge at the beginning was getting attention. Part of that is new IP. And that's an uphill battle always. But also, I think that the art direction actually didn't serve us at the beginning with getting attention. The art direction that we landed on got everyone's attention, and that was really kind of interesting. That change, that a lot of folks in the industry that when the art direction was revealed, approached me and you guys are dumb. That's a huge risk. You're going to totally eat it. And I was like, I don't think so. I think that's actually going to help people notice something that's great anyway. And now that you can't just be great. You have to be great and known to be great. Like you can't. So you kind of have to have the attention too. And that art direction got everyone's attention. What was the question?
well, I was going to say, I think we actually got some benefit working with 2K also, because BioShock had come out only a couple years before, and that kind of gave us some additional, I think, credibility of like, hey, you know what? They're working with the same people that made BioShock, another first-person shooter with a lot of strong role-playing elements. So people were kind of like getting acclimated to the idea of a shooter isn't just, 10 guns and 10 levels and, that's that. It was like that it could be a deeper, more meaningful experience.
There was a time where we'd done the Game Informer, we'd unveiled the game to the world, and then some video of the game had gone out from some game shows, and there was a website that cropped up. And this website had taken all the screenshots from the from the videos.
Yeah,
and they'd taken every screenshot from all the guns, because there was at one point in the video where we walked around and just spawned like 100, 200 guns or whatever. And they had just had, each of these guns had one frame of the item card. And what they had done is they had taken every single one of these guns and put it into a big list. And then, if you recall, every gun has its own unique model number. And they started to take the model numbers of all the guns and then digest them and like what they mean based on the stats. They reverse engineered it. Yeah, so the VDF 90X means that it's a little more accurate, but if it's the 91, then it's got a longer barrel. And as soon as I saw that, I realized like, okay, the world is actually just as ravenous for this game as I am.
We had probably a year where we debated the title. Our working title was the name of the planet, Pandora.
As a developer, like picking the name is always, it's actually one of the hardest things you do, because like, that's what you're gonna be associated with forever. So that's like, a name lasts forever, You have to, you're trying to look at it from all these different angles of, does it sound cool? What can the logo treatment look like? All these kind of technical things, but also like, how does it feel, And it's really, it turns into like an emotional process, because, you're looking at all these different names and trying to gauge like how they fit in and so on. And well, I guess Pandora is good, that works for us. And it's easy to kind of get detached from, especially when you're sitting in a meeting room or something, looking at dozens or hundreds of names in a day, and it all just kind of blurs together. And so sometimes that kind of really clear, decisive moment coming at it from a different angle that says, no, this word's perfect. And then once we all heard it, we're like, yeah, that's it, So it just kind of clicked, yeah.
It's kind of funny though. Matt named the planet Pandora, and a lot of people on the team, I thought it was clever, and a lot of people on the team were like, no, it's so, like, everybody knows the story of Pandora's box. It's so obvious. You're giving away, something, and Matt's like, dude, it doesn't matter. People, it's half the fun. It's like a magic trick, And I always kind of liked it because I agreed it was kind of a magic trick. But there was this huge debate about whether Pandora would be a stupid name for the planet or not. And then, of course, we're years into it, and we learn about James Cameron's movie, Avatar, and how he named his planet Pandora, and Matt was like, see? unless you're saying James Cameron's stupid. We had all these interesting characters that we created, but they were just characters. And there was this moment where we realized where if we connect each character with a game function, then so Scooter is connected to the cars, and Marcus is connected to the stores, and Claptrap is connected to the quest board, and Zed is connected to the Dr. Zed is connected to the healing and health stuff, and all that, and that kind of just gave a
solidifies
purpose.
Things,
and it connected the characters in the story to the gameplay.
They had personality. Like up until before Claptrap, like the environments were starting to look cool, but there wasn't like any personality to what was going on, and there wasn't much attitude in the environment. And once we actually had characters that had a little bit of story and sounded interesting, and they all had these roles that were tied directly to the game, a lot more personality made it into the game than up until that point. The gameplay was fantastic, but it felt a little
the other thing
shallow.
magical that happened there too, I mean, Dave did a lot in his performance of Claptrap. Like, there was a lot of ad-libbing, and he did a lot to lend personality to that character. But another thing that happened when I wrote a lot of the stuff initially, and when I write, I tend to prioritize the information that the player needs to understand what the hell's going on, so that they can track things. And a lot of my stuff was kind of dry in that regard. So Mikey comes along and basically rewrites all of my stuff, so the information is there, but he added all this personality to it. And then you get these crazy characters like Tannis coming out of that, and Scooter became really entertaining. He wrote a character for me, a Crazy Earl. I actually performed Crazy Earl in the game, and it was just like this crazy nut job guy, that's lost it out in the wasteland. He should have a bigger part. What were you doing when Borderlands released? Do you remember, Graeme? Were you sleeping?
I might have been catching on some sleep. No, it was really exciting for me. It was first project I was a lead on, and I invested, just like everyone else on this team, so much of myself into this project, and I wanted it to be successful, and did everything in my power to make sure it was that way. So that night that it came out, I was at one of the GameStops. I think it was the Frisco one, up at the mall, and I was there with some of the guys, and it was just really cool to see something that I'd worked so hard on be on a shelf somewhere, and
people waiting in line at
people
midnight.
Yeah, people were waiting in line for it. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. This is actually happening. So, yeah, that night was pretty special to have people come in and sign posters and sign stuff. Like, that's really rewarding to see people care that much about what you care about. It was awesome.
For me, the release day is one I'll never forget, because there was a group of us that agreed to go over to a GameStop over on the Fort Worth side of town, because apparently that was like the #1 GameStop of all in the country in terms of pre-orders. And so, wow, what a great opportunity to go meet a bunch of fans at this one store where they're really excited about the game. So there was, 8 or 10 of us that all hopped in a limo, drove over there. When we got there, they had 4 Xboxes set up with TVs out on the sidewalk, and we're playing the game in co-op. So that was really fun. We're hanging out. We did a little kind of mini roundtable where people asked us questions and we talked about stuff. And then when midnight hit, everybody lined up and went to buy the game. And, a lot of times as developers, we don't get copies of the games until maybe a week or 2 weeks later, because we want to get it out there for the fans. But I really wanted to play the game then, so I stood in line and bought my own copy. and I thought it would be really cool, because everybody's having you sign stuff. Well, like that store, the store manager and the employees were so excited about Borderlands. They had done a really great job of selling the game for us. So I had them sign my copy because I wanted to remember those guys, And so then we stood in line and signed a bunch of posters and stuff. And the other part I'll never forget is signing some chick's boobs. So that was pretty good too. There was definitely that time towards the very end where, you're working all day, you still have some more stuff to do, so you go home to get some dinner or something. And if you lay down on the couch for 10 minutes, like, you're going to fall asleep. But then your phone's buzzing with new emails or texts like, hey, some problem's coming up. So you wake up kind of bleary-eyed and you look at it and you're like, okay, I need to deal with that. But then you fall back asleep for a second. And then it buzzes again, you're like, oh, crap, I really do have to deal with that. So that's what it's sort of like at the very end of the phase, but it's rewarding in the end,
Yeah. You were like integral to the release engineering on that project. That was pretty hardcore. I remember, I think I did probably 22 hours straight one of those days, and Jimmy had already been there before I showed up the whole night, and then he was still there when I'd left, and I was like, dude, you're gonna die. We need to find a partner for you or something.
It was still better than when we shipped Road to Hill 30, because in the last 4 days of that project, I didn't sleep all, but maybe a few days, and my water heater went out at home also. And so when we finally did ship it, I went home and slept for literally a whole day didn't happen. I slept for 24 hours straight. And in part of that, I was sleeping on the couch while the guy's in there fixing the water heater, banging on the pipes and welding or whatever he's doing. I didn't care. I was just out. So Borderlands was at least better than that, because they had hot water.
What was your day like?
It didn't feel real to me. It was just like a big dream. The same thing. I went to the GameStop and I signed. I signed a copy. That was really weird. You want my autograph? Sure. That was really weird. Never had that experience before. But the other thing was, at the time I was working on the DLC. We're getting ready for that, and so it was also really odd. No, I'm still working on this. What do you mean you have the game? Okay, I'll sign it.
I just made a check-in an hour ago. What's going on here?
So yeah, it probably wasn't until about a week later that I realized, wait a minute, this game is out and the world loves it. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So
because that's true. The moment the game was in final cert and it was away, we're like, okay, DLC, because everybody still wanted to keep going, and we figured out we made a decision. We did our design in 1 week. Within a span of a week, we're like, here's what we're gonna do, and that led to Dr. Ned, the Zombie Island of Dr. Ned, and we knew we were so such a well-oiled machine at that point in how to make Borderlands that it was we just blazed right through that phase, and very quickly it was well, we maybe we should start telling people because our publishing partner got excited and we were excited, and so I think we made a tactical mistake. We before the game reached store shelves, we're hey, we figured out our DLC and we're excited about it and we hope you like this too, and people why isn't that in the game? It's well, you haven't even started working on it yet. The game's in certification, it's being manufactured. What do you mean it should be in the game? And people assumed because we had announced it that it was already done. Because there's a 2-month period between when you're done with the game and when it reaches store shelves. in that 2 months, like we can be doing a lot of great things in development for DLC and other things. But we're not allowed to talk about them, otherwise people will think that should be in the box too.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. The truth is there's so much of everyone that's on the team in the game. It's kind of a shame that only the 4 of us can be in this room to fit and be mic'd up, because there's so much of everyone that had to do with it, and it became a really personal project for everybody. It's one of those kind of magic things.